Over the years, the push for multiple streams of income to grow wealth has boosted the popularity of side hustles, which are defined as entrepreneurial activities outside of a normal job that generate extra income. But is it possible that side hustles can detract from career progression? Entrepreneur Dotun Oloroporoku tweeted his thoughts on this matter in the affirmative, which sparked a side hustle versus career progression debates on social media. He joins me now live from the UK, Bristol, rather, to discuss this. He is, of course, the Associate Director at Novastar Ventures LLP. Good morning to you, Dotun. Thank you so much for joining us. So it's widely believed that multiple streams of income are a pathway to financial success, be it through dividends, capital appreciation from investments, and side hustles. So with respect to side hustles, your tweet, though, does say otherwise. Have side hustles been overhyped?
Thanks a lot for having me on this show, because first of all, I need to maybe define a few things here. One is Twitter does not allow you to be nuanced, and most things in life are nuanced. So whilst that tweet appeared to be like it's a definitive, but there are very various ranges in life. Okay, so there are people that should maybe because they needed to make some money, they could do 9-to-5 job, but also have side hustle. But what I tweet, the spirit of that tweet is that a lot of side hustle and the myth of it sometimes has actually made a lot of people to be distracted from focusing on one thing that is good in their life, maybe their career. For someone who wants to be top of their career, whether in the public service or even in private sector, as an entrepreneur who is building a business, or even working with an entrepreneur building a business. Let's say you're working in a bank. If you do side hustle, and I'm going to define what I mean by side hustle, which is not just multiple streams of income. If you do side hustle, it could potentially distract you from becoming the best that you can be or excelling in your main job. Now, let me define what I mean by side hustle here. Side hustle is what you actively do, rather than what you some of the things that you define multiple stream of income. Multiple stream of income can include side hustle, but it's not excluded to that. So if you're investing in shares, capital market or stuff, you're not actively doing things about that. They are passive income. And that is not what I'm talking about in this tweet. What I'm focusing on, what I'm attacking in this tweet is a lot of things that people do, especially maybe made popular in Nigeria, where one job is not enough for a lot of people. And then they have this 9-to-5 job. Maybe they're a civil servant, but they have a shop at night, and that or in the weekends, and that distract them from actually focusing on becoming the best they will be. So I think, going back to your last question, is side hustle overhyped? Yes, to some extent, especially if it's distracting you from the main thing that you can be good at, which is more than just making money, but being good at something, a career that you can progress in.
All right, great. So as far as how a side hustle can possibly lead to mediocrity in one's main job, your point now is that it's pretty much a distraction. Is that the main thing? Are there any other ways that a side hustle can lead to mediocrity in one's normal job or actual possible career that they should be focusing on?
Yeah. So the key thing here is about focus. And I think it was the founder of Alibaba, Jack Ma, that said, maybe he was emphasizing an old Chinese proverb that said, if you pursue two rats, you will lose one. Actually, it's a Yoruba proverb as well, too. If you pursue two rats, you're going to lose both of them, potentially. But when you are doing side hustle, and some of these side hustle could be very active. I mean, building another business, which is a very big thing on its own. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to work on it. I've been an entrepreneur. I'm still as an investor. It takes more than 70 hours of the week. It takes a lot of your time. It takes your mental energy. It takes your emotional energy sometimes. And it also takes your hours. And all of us have 24 hours in a day. Now, if you're doing that as a side hustle, and you also have career, let's say you're an accountant, and you're working in KPMG, it's inevitable that you're not going to be the best in both ways. And you're not going to be as good as one of your colleagues who is focusing on being a partner at KPMG, who is doing that day in, day out, who is taking maybe some of the jobs home and working on that report, fine-tuning it and doing it over the weekend. Now, you're not going to be as excelling as that person. That's the core of that tweet. Now, the other thing I need to say here is that there's some side hustle that become main hustle. And there are people who need to maybe start a side hustle and make it their main hustle over time. So they're using that time to maybe gain leverage, to get finance, or to be able to pay their bill before they make their side hustle pay their bill. And I can understand that. But when people live in a perpetual state of doing side hustles, you will inevitably not be good at both of them. Your business will not be as good as the other person who is doing it full time, and your career will suffer as well.
All right, thank you for that. So what about if someone wants to say that side hustles have been credited with allowing one to pursue their true passion while being able to put food on the table through their main job or main source of employment? What do you make of that narrative?
Like I said, life is nuanced, and one of the things that Twitter will not allow you to do is to explain that nuance. And there are multiple shades here. There are people who are doing this perpetually, and they're maybe even sometimes cheating their employers by working on their side also in the employer's time. There are people who are potentially maybe pursuing a passion, and you're not doing it for the money. Probably somebody who wants to go into photography and who likes photography, and it's in the evening or after coming from work, they are doing that, and maybe they're earning some money from it, or they're just doing it out of passion. They go to birthdays and they take photography. That's not what the tweet is about. So I'm okay with that, and I also encourage people. I mean, I do myself encourage people to have something outside their 9 to 5. The core of that tweet is not that you must only focus on your career and nothing else. There are lots of other things that people do, religion, working, holiday, whatever. And some of them could be like work as well, where you can make money from. For example, I host a podcast, even though my main job and my only job is as an investor, invest in startups in Africa. But I also host a podcast, interviewing entrepreneurs, interviewing investors. Now, that's passion. That's not that I'm focusing on that as a side also to give me some money in order to balance out whether if my work doesn't do well. The core of that tweet is about people trying to reduce their risk. It's a risk assessment thing where it's okay. I have a job, but I also have a shop where I'm selling clothes in the evening, and that is taking a lot of my attention.
Okay, thank you for that. What about building additional skills and honing them? Can having side hustles be viewed as positive for a skill building, or can you somehow incorporate that into your number one priority, which is your source of employment?
Correct. Like I said before as well, yeah, there are many nuances in life. Developing new skills is very important beyond what you're called at. So if I'm an accountant, for example, I'm trying to develop skills in, let's say, writing prose or writing novel, which is far from the numbers that I'm used to. That is okay. And actually, people evolved. Some people start life as a doctor, and then they quickly move to become an accountant. And over time, they move to become a hopper and stuff like that. And they develop those skills whilst they're still focusing on their main career. The core of my argument or my thesis is, if you want to progress in your career, and I'm talking about career progressing jobs, not just jobs that put money on the table. Talking about if you have, and this is beyond you just and getting salary. You want to progress in your career. You want to become something. You want to make an impact in what you're doing. You need to give it a full-time attention. Now, that doesn't stop you from developing passion and developing skill set in other areas. That is beyond just working. And we don't expect people to just be one-dimensional. People are multifaceted. There are people who are MD of a bank during the day, and they're pastors over the weekend, and they're doing that perfectly. And that's not what I'm addressing here. So it is important for people to know that they can develop skill sets. But it's also important for us to, and again, it's very hard for us as humans to hold this kind of contradiction sometimes perfectly well. But it's very important for us to know that anyone that focuses well, we outplay and out-execute someone who has a divided attention over multiple stream of side also or other things that they're doing on the side.
Great stuff. Okay, so what about where things are presently, like the COVID-19 pandemic? Disposable incomes have shrunk. Would then, I mean, I understand your argument here, you should focus on your main job and so on and so forth, but would the present environment that we're seeing ourselves in, the present job environment, if that was to push one into survival mode, would you then, understand them going the route of multiple side hustles in order to stay alive, or as opposed to, well, as far as incomes being cut down, people being laid off, so on and so forth? How would you view the present environment forcing people into more side hustles?
Absolutely, yes. And that is totally understandable. And again, by the way, like I said, this is just my own view. It doesn't mean that it's the only truth and ever truth. So there's some people who might be having a career and they're progressing well in a career and they're still having a side hustle. But if people are faced with difficulty, with potential job loss and real and existential threats to their income, yes, they should find a way. People, I mean, myself, I will find a way to mitigate that risk. One of my primary responsibilities is to put food on the table for my family, to make sure that my family is well fed and we're paying the mortgage. That's very important. That's very understandable. So when people are faced with a threat of being made redundant and they see opportunity of mitigating that risk by starting a business on the side, yes, that's fine. But at least you know that. You know that's why you're going into it. I think the core of the argument here is people that are in perpetual state of risk mitigation and expecting to excel and do better than someone who is focusing on that job, on that career for full time. That is where this is. So people can do anything that they want. And there are people, a lot of people point my attention, even in that tweet, to examples of people who did 3 or 4 things. And they excel. And this goes again into a lot of entrepreneurs as well in Nigeria, where we make examples of outliers. We rather than the norm, rather than what is actually normative in the population. We point to people who are tycoons, who are doing multiple businesses, forgetting that at the beginning, people need to focus. And most people that succeed in businesses are focused on one thing, they hone it before they diversify. So it's that diversification risk that I'm addressing here for people. Now, if you're faced with a risk that your job might be out in the next few months, or actually you're having a job, you're having a pay cut, yes, it's perfectly understandable not to put all your attention in that job.
Fantastic.
To do something else that can give you money.
Great stuff. Only got about a minute and a half left. Is this a generational thing? If you look at the millennial generation, or I guess Gen Z or so, and the gig economy, the ride-hailing jobs and so on and so forth, and their tendency to switch from one career to the next and also get multiple side hustles, could you see that as a generational thing?
Yeah, I can say that maybe to some extent. There is some data that showed that the millennials probably they started their career in the middle of the boom of the gig economy, the Uberization of career, where people they don't have maybe too much loyalty to one employer, and they see themselves as the startup of themselves, where they sell their services to multiple people. I can get that. Maybe the generation before them or before us, they start a career and they want to do it to the end. They want to stay with one employer for a long, long time. Probably there is some truth in that, in that data, and in the data that shows that maybe it's a generational thing. But I don't think the idea of focusing and excelling is one thing, and putting your work in that, putting a lot of attention. And we say that to a lot of startups that we invest in. We want to invest in startups, in founders that are focusing on that startup 24/7. That's what they're doing. That's the only thing. They're not doing another business on the side to mitigate the risk.
Right,
so we're going to put millions of dollars into your business to make it grow. So there's that truth there, which is forever rather than just generational.
Fantastic stuff. Dotun Oloroporokun, Associate Director at Novastar Ventures LLP. Thank you so much for your insightful thoughts on this matter. Side hustles versus career focus. Thank you so much. We appreciate your insights.